Welcome to Mindfulness Manufacturing. My name is Trevor Blondeel. Spending 25 years in manufacturing, I discovered the real impact we have on turnover, communication, and the ability to manage change is how we show up. That's the essence of emotional intelligence. In each episode, we bring a guest or message to expand your skills, engage your people, and grow your organization. So let's jump in. When I started running manufacturing plants, I got stuck sometimes wanting to be that leader that had the answers. I'm telling people what to do and I'm trying to figure things out. It took me decades to figure out it's not about what we're telling people. It's like, what can we learn? What's their thinking? If we want to change someone's behavior, we got to change their thinking. That only comes through conversations. I met an expert on asking powerful questions, Chad Littlefield. Welcome to the show, Chad.
It's super good to be here. I'm excited to see what questions we dive into.
You started these We Connect cards. I'll talk a little bit about these as we go along here. This is how I really started to get to know you and reading your book. You have hundreds of YouTube videos, and I've watched some of those. You've been doing this as a TEDx speaker, obviously best-selling author. I've done a book report. I've read your book a couple times and use a lot of that material. So today I just want to have you on the show and say, why do people like Trevor struggle so much sometimes in manufacturing to just ask better questions and create that conversation?
So let's just experientially do this. I'm going to ask you a question that might be the too long didn't read the book. You have all this experience in manufacturing. You've read Ask Powerful Questions twice. I'm curious, what's one of the things that most struck you about the book, about the ideas in the book?
Yeah. So one is that second question, and then not always focused on the outcome. The saying I often use is like, be curious. Whenever we go into something, be curious. And I found that really reading yours kind of took me that another level deeper. Like, how do I get better at this? Because I already have made that transition, but you might get an outcome that you weren't expecting.
And if you're really tied to the outcome or you're trying to push toward a very specific outcome, you are very similar to a lawyer. And I haven't met very many people who want to work for a lawyer. No offense to any attorneys listening. Leading questions where you're trying to get people to a certain place feels a lot more manipulative than when you're asking a genuinely open question and curious about what somebody, and oftentimes I think about it like the conversational lottery. You ask a question and you may win the lottery, but you have to be open to a different outcome than you were expecting.
The times where I would get into those more direct questions, I have had people say, like, I feel like you're interrogating me, but I just didn't know better. And it wasn't until I started being around stronger leaders that would ask better questions that I could do better at that. So if there's a safety issue, we just got to come at that with a different mindset of just like, okay, I'm not assuming this person did something wrong. So you talk about
the antidote to this, so that the person feeling interrogated on the other side, here's the antidote. That friend Kaylin Blakeney, who I worked with, used to say, a conversation without self-disclosure is an interrogation. And so even though I'm very passionate about questions and co-wrote a book on asking, like, if you only ask questions, particularly when you're a leader in a position of power, you already are starting a little bit behind, because when you're asking a direct report a question, they're already wondering, why is he asking me this question? Mm-hmm. What does this person want from me? And so it's the same kind of context if you're at a conference or a trade show and you're walking around and somebody's standing behind a booth and they ask you, have you ever heard about blank, blank, blank? You're immediately wondering, what does this person want to sell me in this moment? So you're intent. And so the first disclosure that often has the ability to mitigate a lot of that lack of safety is disclosing your genuine intention for asking the question. It's incredibly disarming, particularly if the intention benefits the other person. If the intention is to call somebody into your office and berate them, make them feel bad, shamed, unsafe, and then send them back out onto the shop floor, then don't share your intention and interrogate them. Go for it. You'll just have to find a new employee next month, because as soon as they find a new job, they're gone. Remind me at some point in our conversation to share, I just thought of such a good story about Corey, who worked on the warehouse floor.
Let's roll it.
I led a retreat for a company. They're no longer around because the owner decided to shut down the business and switch gears to something else. They were the company that supplied arcades in the US. Those arcades have all these prizes and the prize things. They were the company that stocked and provided most arcades with all the stuff that's there. And so for them, they were trying to maximize space in a box. They wanted to make sure that boxes were packed full. People at arcades aren't ordering one item at a time. They're just giving me give me package one. And then they send them 50 different toys and things.
Yeah.
I was at this retreat and this person got up and told a story. His name was Corey. I'm sharing this story with permission from both Corey and the CEO. Corey was sharing the story about how Ron, the CEO, called Corey down to his office. Corey was being paid minimum wage to work on a shop floor, packing boxes filled with stuff. He had this empty spot and he was like, nothing fits in here. And so he grabbed something that wasn't in the prescribed list that he was supposed to do. It was like a Gabriel the Guardian Angel action figure kind of toy. And it fit perfectly in the spot. He packed it in several hundred boxes. It was all good. Until about a month or two later, customers are calling like, what is this thing? No one wants it. It's collecting dust. This isn't what we ordered. This wasn't on the list. Well, he's creating all this customer service complaints. And so Ron called him down to his office and Corey is like, oh boy, this is it. I'm definitely getting fired for sure, but I'm not even that mad because I was already thinking about quitting to begin with. So Corey shows up into the room and Ron just says, I know you're familiar with the customer service and the whole Gabriel Guardian Angel, blah, blah, blah. I just want to say thank you for taking the risk and taking the chance to take initiative to figure out you had a space in a box, you packed it in. I really appreciate that. Corey left. Now, the cool part is Corey, when he was telling the story at the retreat I was at, he was on the exec team as a VP in the company. So this employee who thought he was going to get fired, who was already about to quit at the very bottom of the totem pole, all of a sudden became very interested and loyal. While Ron didn't ask a question in that moment, what he did was accomplish what sharing a really clear intent. He did it just experientially, but Ron basically said, my intention is to reward you and say thank you for a screw up rather than punish you and shame you. That is my intent in this working relationship. That's how we're going to operate here. He didn't have to say all those words. He just did it and lived that intention out. That's a really lovely story, not always as easy to practice when you're in a one-on-one or having a difficult conversation. The very practical, repeatable thing that anybody listening can immediately steal is in your next conversation that you're having, pause long enough to consider what is my intent in this conversation. And then here's how you stretch it, because your intent may or may not benefit the other person. And if it doesn't, that's a goal or an objective. Most things that we call intents at work are actually goals or objectives. It's like, we want to review the strategic plan or maximize output this week. Take that idea and just add these two words to the end of that sentence. So we want to maximize output this week so that every employee's bonus is higher. And whatever comes after the so that, input a currency that that person cares about. The person sitting across from you, what's important to them? And so it might be, hey, I want to call everybody together for a meeting to review how we can be a little bit more efficient so that on Fridays we can start getting out a half hour early so you can go fishing and golfing. If a leader is sharing that intent in a way that encompasses what somebody else cares about, there's a whole lot more buy-in. If you share a miniature intention before you ask a question, it's like night and day difference in terms of response for somebody.
Yeah. One of my chapters in the book is called The Road to Hell is Filled with Good Intentions. I started as a very good leader in my intentions, but I didn't tell people, just taking that extra 5 seconds to say, hey, these are my intentions. Perceptions matter more than good intentions. And sometimes you think they might be a good intention and it might not be landing with that person. So the fact what you're saying is just saying it out loud is going to get you on the page, because if it's not connecting, now all of a sudden you got another conversation, because you can tell from the body language, how they're receiving you, and just have that conversation of, hey, this is my intent. So I like the CEO one, because that one takes a lot of courage, right? And leadership takes a lot of courage. And we are really struggling as an industry, not just manufacturing and in construction, trades, warehousing, logistics, and people are just not lining up to the door to come want to work. But man, if you had a company that said, yeah, we got pressure and we had some customer service issues, but there was a different conversation and it didn't always have to be a question. That's interesting.
So let me offer a bright spot. So one of the questions I have been carrying around lately, and while I have worked with several manufacturing logistics folks, it's not my priority focus. And I think that might be a benefit to folks that are listening, because sometimes you get stuck in your own world and your
Yes.
niche and your story, and the stories start to repeat. And so the one question that I've been carrying around is, what is a story that is continuing to be told and retold that is no longer serving you? So the
Yeah.
story is, people aren't really lining up. They're not wanting these jobs. It's hard to retain people. It's hard to recruit people. And every time we say that, it allows us to further root into the fact that this is true and it's hard and there's not a way out. So let me offer a story from a similarly hard to recruit to, hard to retain industry, food and
Yeah.
beverage. Invite everybody who's listening to ruthlessly steal and reinterpret everything I'm about to say and apply it to their own world and context. I'm at a conference, just gave a keynote at this event called Conscious Capitalism. So it's like business for good. I think a lot of manufacturing is business for good, and that is overlooked.
Mm.
That may not be a really sexy version of work, but just look around whatever you're driving in or sitting in right now. It was created by people and wouldn't have existed without manufacturing.
Mhm.
So I'm at this conference and I bump into this CEO, comes up to me after my talk, and he's like, I really love that. You're speaking a little bit about retention and the impact of questions and conversation and culture to retain employees. I just wanted to share with you, we got 40, 50 pizza shops around Texas, and we have 100% annual employee retention rate, which, if you know anything about food and beverage, just does not happen. If Wendy's can keep an employee for 3 months, they're like, cool, thanks for helping us get through this quarter. On to the next person. 100%. So naturally, my next question is how? And his answer was this: every single employee that is onboarding a new employee is trained to not talk about the dough, not talk about flour, not talk about the cash register, not talk about any details of the job at all. They are trained to say some version of, hey, thanks for coming and working at the pizza shop. I realize that you're probably not going to work here forever. And in fact, we don't even want you to work here forever. And so right at the beginning, before we talk about dough, before we talk about cash registers, before we talk about the role, we need your help. So we're really glad you're here. But I want to know, what do you actually want? Where do you want to go? You want to go to night school? It's just like, what do you want? Let's just say 5 years from now. And a lot of people applying to work at a pizza shop do not know what they want 5 years from now. And they say, that's okay. Tomorrow when you show up for
Yeah.
your shift, I'm going to ask you the same question. Where do you want to go? What do you want 5 years from now? Because what we want to do is our pizza shop, we want to be a stepping stone that just helps you get to that next place. If you really want to get your associate's degree and night classes happen on Wednesday evenings, we are going to move mountains so that you're not scheduled on Wednesdays and you can get this degree. People see the pizza shop as a stepping stone to some further aspiration or pursuit, whether it's within the organization or outside of. And when that's shared, what happens is people end up sticking around 2, 3, 4, 5 years at a pizza
Mm.
shop because they know that's building towards something for them. The ultimate intention is to benefit your life, unrelated to the work you're doing here. And if on every manufacturing plant you had somebody come in, I'm imagining someone coming to their day. So you correct me if I'm wrong. So I'm just picturing somebody walking into work on their first day. They maybe had 1 or 2 beers that they shouldn't have had the night before. They flick a cigarette on the ground. They come into this job thinking, their first question on their mind is, can I get paid in advance rather than in 2 weeks from now? Or how often do you pay and how much is the pay? And this is the sentiment coming in. So imagine that person comes in and that's what they're caring about right now. And the person meeting with them or recruiting them is saying, and I realize that this is not all manufacturing. I'm just trying to pick a hard case
Yeah.
scenario, because
Let's
if
have
we
some
can
fun
make
with it.
that work in that scenario, it might
Yeah.
work outside of. Is that too stereotypical? Am I offending people right now, Trevor?
No, no. And because it's all over, right? I mean, we're struggling to get people that are already in North America, right? Because we bring in people outside of North America to help in Canada and the US with manufacturing. It's easy to live in the narrative of, well, people just don't want to work. Okay, so now you're going to look for information to feed that, right? What are you doing? Even if they say, hey, people that, that they don't even show up the first day. So maybe a good question to ask is like, how did you set them up for that first day? Did you have a conversation with them before? If you're the owner and you're struggling, are you calling them on Friday and say, hey, I'm looking forward to seeing you on Monday? What might that do? It's that whole frame shift of like, how do we kind of shift our own narrative, which is going to shift our and this is why I resonate with the intentions, right? Because it's what is your intention, and are you really landing that way with them, and then are you checking in with them?
Well, so let's edit this story. People don't want to work. I don't actually know a lot of people, and I meet a lot of people on a yearly basis. I interact with a whole lot of people from very different walks of life. I don't know a lot of people who don't want to work. I do know a lot of people who don't want to work really hard for someone who doesn't care about them, who will discard them the minute they don't need them, who have no concern for their well-being or future whatsoever, and just want to feed the company's bottom line. I know lots of people like that.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to capture the people that will work hard, but just want someone to care. And so the essence of the pizza shop story is they used a question, which is, what do you really want? I know you're probably not going to work here forever. I acknowledge that. What's really important to you? And if I know that, can we rearrange things and make some adaptations to your work to allow you to pursue whatever that is that's important to you? If you know, like, I'm here to support my kids, the follow-up question is like, tell me about your kids. How old are they? And fourth grade, like they probably get out of school around 3:00. Would it work if we arranged a schedule so that you got to clock in at 6 a.m. on Fridays, but leave at 2 p.m. so that you could be there for your daughter every single Friday?
Mm-hmm.
That conversation is totally, and I realize the bigger the company is, the harder it may be to do these customized things for all the snowflakes that are working for us. And I say that lovingly,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So I realize that there's someone listening. There would be lots of reasons to say, nah, this wouldn't work for me. My invitation is pause long enough to consider how you might ruthlessly steal and reinterpret and apply it to your own context. Even half of this could save you 10 hours a month of trying to recruit new employees.
This is how we can transform the industry, not
Yeah.
just the industry. I do this with many different industries, Chad, and I like having your different perspective. It's like that chocolate fountain I talk about, right? Whatever's coming out of the top, your chocolate's not going to get any better. So we really need that behaviors at the top. So even, relationships on the executive level, right? If you're not caring about each other and having those better conversations, what is everyone else here for? Those behaviors will trickle down through a manufacturing plant. Rarely will I find it going really well on the shop floor, but the managers aren't very good. Usually, if the managers or the top leaders are not thinking in that way and asking those questions. I just did a keynote workshop with Penske Logistics. We used Chad's We Connect cards, which are cards with different types of questions. The powerful part that Chad just highlighted was the second question. Oh, what are you here for? Your kids. Okay, that's good. So I know that you got kids and you're doing this, but it's like, could we stop and ask another question? And the other one that I really learned from you, which really lands now, is that the empathy concept, right? Of like, oh, you got kids? I got a 27-year-old, I got a 25-year-old. And all of a sudden, I've taken that conversation. It's not about Chad, it's about Trevor. And I think that's just a nugget for the listeners too, because you've glued that in my mind.
Even taking the most basic example, 90% of conversations with brand new people that you're just meeting for the first time start with some version of where are you from? What do you do? Maybe something about the family. So just take where you're from. Where you're from, Guatemala. Either the conversations ends there and you have to restart it, or you say, oh, no way. One of my best friends or one of my best employees from 5 years ago was from Guatemala and I really love blank dish. Now you're talking about me. Yeah. So play this exact scenario and just as you're listening, listen to the difference between tapping into what I call the magic of a second question. It's not about interrogating someone. It's just the magic of one additional question rooted in your curiosity. And so where are you from? Guatemala. Oh, no way. What was it like growing up in Guatemala? Turns into a conversation that actually matters, where you're going to learn something about that person that could become highly relevant to the way you communicate with them at work. Mm-hmm. Right? One of the things that I talk about with this idea of connection before content is anybody who's seen the movie Ocean's 11 with George Clooney, when they get back together with the old gang, George Clooney, with like the people that he's already worked with and pulled off lots of heists with, they don't have to do all this relearning of each other and communicating and getting to know each other. He just says, hey, let's do what we did in Panama. And then they have a plan and they're mapped out. That's the essence for me. That's why a leader wants to be deliberate about connecting before content and asking questions and following up with the magic of a second question. It's not to interrogate. It's to actually build the foundation that allows you to move faster with that person. If you already have that rapport established, you can ask them to do hard things. They will trust that you have their best interest in mind because you've built that foundation. If you do not have that foundation, they will care just as much about you as you do about them, or maybe less. And so if you don't really care all that much and you ask them to do something hard and they don't want to do it, why would they sacrifice? The only reason I'm sacrificing for you is money. That thread can work for long enough, but lots of people are trying to recruit lots of people. And so there's money elsewhere. This is not the only place that they can make $15 an hour or $20 an hour or even $100 an hour, depending on the role in the industry.
You got to go. My mentor had said, you got to go slow before you go fast, right? Just that little bit. If we can just take anything away, if you can go a little bit slower today with one person, and just ask that second question, just kind of talk to them a little bit more. And I promise you, because I'm the guy that wasn't doing that and started doing that. And it's like, oh, okay. So now people go through the wall for you. Things can happen really fast, but you can't just all of a sudden go fast off the gate if you don't know, like, what is this for? And do you even care? And why? It seems simple when you and I are talking, and then you walk into a huge manufacturing plant and trying to, working to shift that. It takes a lot of intention, it takes a lot of practice. And that's where I think your book as a resource and in this episode. And the one question I had for myself was, sometimes I'll say, how are you feeling about this conversation? And you had some different questions to ask. Tell me about why going to an alternative is helpful.
How are you feeling? Lovely question. If you ask it too much, you might start to sound like Dr. Phil, and that's never a good thing. So if I ask you, how do you feel about this conversation? People who tend to experience the world through feeling, stories, emotion, they're going to have responses to that. And people who are open to sharing that. If I ask you, what did you think about this conversation? People who tend to experience the world through logic and data and reason are going to have an answer to that. I really like the question, what struck you or what'd you notice about this conversation? Because it allows someone to answer from either perspective or both. It's a much more open question. This is like the question, what struck you, is like, should be in every leader's back pocket. So you have a safety incident on the shop floor. You go to review the situation or debrief the situation with folks. You can either yell at them, make rules, add policies, and send them back out. Or you can say, I'm curious, I wasn't on the floor. I'm curious, what struck you about this whole situation? What'd you notice? What struck you about the situation? And you'll have people say like, so-and-so, blah, blah, blah. The answers to that question are almost never about the content of what people said. It's about the process underneath that really caused the issue. It drops the conversation down a layer of depth and intention. It also puts people that are working with you into the position of their own expertise. One of the most beautiful ways to honor somebody who's chosen to exchange their time to create something for your organization is to put them in the position of their own expertise. I was talking with one of the founders of Burt's Bees, like chapstick and other stuff. They were trying to go zero waste. They took all the trash cans in the entire facility, laid out tarps in the parking lot, and picked through all the trash and just had discussions from every employee, from the shop floor to the CEO, just had discussions on picking apart each piece of trash. What could we do instead of this to eliminate this piece of trash from even being used in the future? One of the things they were having trouble with in the production process of particularly chapsticks, there was some sticker around the outside that people would peel off, and then it would often end up, on the ground somewhere. And it was an employee who saw this and was like, wait, why are we ripping this tab? Why don't we have people just twist the cap and all the sticker stays right on the chapstick? We don't need to rip off this little section of it. That employee, when they gave that suggestion, was making 13 or 14 bucks an hour. The people who organized that did something very wise, which is they put people in the position of their own expertise, regardless of their title. They said, you have a perspective on how things work around here that nobody else has because they're not behind your eyes in your brain. And so the intention of me asking the question is to gather your perspectives so that I can put all these perspectives together and choose the best path that's going to serve everybody, including our customers. Totally different narrative than, hey, plebeian, do this for me now, please.
Or we got to hit a cost savings objective. Got to hit this number. And this is what it's about, Chad. It's about hitting the number. We need some cost savings ideas. We need to have less waste. And it's just this drumbeat. And we just got to change the beat, right? You're the subject matter experts. You're the expert in that area. What struck you? What were you thinking when that safety issue happened? Tell me the story through your eyes. You know, instead of like, why did you do that, Chad? It's a totally different framework. I got about 20 more questions and we're out of time. But how I've seen you keynote, Chad, at Thrive. You did fantastic. What you're doing is changing people at home and at work. I think it just makes us better versions of ourselves when we can be more curious. We can ask better questions. Just appreciate your work and appreciate you coming on the show. What's the best way for the listeners? We got YouTube.
Yeah.
We got a lot of good videos there.
Google,
what's the best way for...
No, I'll show up anywhere. So Chad Littlefield, if you type that, if you're driving, type it in later. But if you search Chad Littlefield, the company I started is weand.me. And I do publish a weekly video that's just intended to like answer a question in a really practical way for a leader who's actively working with folks. There's just a ton of free value that I put out there. Good information that changes the world should ideally be free. I pay my mortgage and make a living off of creating really great experiences based out of those ideas. And so all of what I share and publish is like, I don't hold anything back. There's not a ton behind a paywall. Go and find what you need to lead fantastic teams and make a difference on your own shop floors or construction sites, if you will.
I've been following you for a while now, and it's been helpful for me in my work. I've shared your work, and it's a gift to have you on the podcast today and share your message and manufacture greatness. So I appreciate it, Chad. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Trevor.
Hey, folks, appreciate you taking the time to join us today. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with someone. Haven't subscribed yet? Do it now. Remember, if you want results, the key is increasing your awareness of how you show up.